Coming off of a 12-4 season, the 2017 Raiders faced sky-high expectations. Many thought they were a contender to the Patriots that season if Derek Carr didn't get hurt. Heading into the offseason, the Raiders seemed ready to take the next step as a team. The first few moves of the offseason were curious ones. Despite having the number 6 ranked offense in the NFL, the Raiders chose to let offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave go. He wasn't considered a top play caller, but he was experienced and one of the big reasons the offense was high-powered. In his place was old quarterback coach Todd Downing. He had been working closely with Derek Carr over the years and was considered to be an up-and-coming coordinator. He knew how the offense works, and if nothing else, he had an old playbook to lean on. No big deal was what most of us thought. The surprising move was retaining defensive coordinator Ken Norton Jr. Despite having Defensive Player of the Year Khalil Mack, the Raiders ranked last in sacks and were generally just a bad defense. The saving grace were their turnovers he created, and maybe another year of experience would help the defense improve. The biggest problem was miscommunication, particularly in the secondary. Everyone would look at different places and leave holes and players wide open. To help remedy this, the Raiders added experienced and former Chargers defensive coordinator John Pagano. He was similar to Musgrave, experienced and knew what to do, but not considered to be great by any means. With free agency, the Raiders surprisingly didn't add many players on the defense. The only notable player was Jelani Jenkins at linebacker, and he didn't even make it into the season. It was a curious move, but many had hoped that if the defense can just be average, the offense will make sure this team is just fine. Despite having a high-powered offense, the Raiders seemed to add even more with the additions of Marshawn Lynch and Jared Cook. Both players were considered high-end players and can contribute to the offense greatly. For me personally, I love the thought of Oakland native Marshawn Lynch playing for his hometown team. As for the draft, this was a wash. Injuries took the first 2 draft picks, and they got little production for the ones that played. I can't call them a bust yet since they weren't on the field and it's just one season. However, the Raiders ended up getting no production from this class, which led to their failure. Through the offseason and preseason, the defense looked to have improved and there really were no concerns about the offense as it looked as potent as ever. Heading into the season, there was little doubt that the Raiders were a playoff team with the offense. The question was with the defense, and if this team was experienced enough to be a true Super Bowl contender. To start the season, the Raiders played like many expected. In fact, the defense even looked like it had improved enough to not be a liability. They were stopping the run pretty well, and the offense was scoring in bunches, highlighted by the 3 touchdown catches by Michael Crabtree against the Jets. The Raiders were rolling at 2-0. In fact, they led the league in points differential. They looked like an elite team early in the season. The offense was rolling, and the move to Todd Downing seemed like it might have even improved the offense. The general feeling was the defense was starting to figure things out and could get better as the season wore on. Then came Sunday night against the Redskins. The Raiders' offense never arrived. The Redskins punched the Raiders in the mouth, and the Raiders didn't know how to respond. Overall, it was a terrible game for everyone. The one simmer of hope was the defense kept them close with turnovers. However, it was just the beginning of what was to come for the Raiders. The next game was against the Broncos in Mile High against their elite defense. The Raiders' defense showed what was to come by really making the Broncos' offense look okay. The Raiders' offense was shut down by the Broncos for most of the game. A deep pass to Johnny Holden was really the only reason the offense had anything. Nothing else was working, but luckily, the Broncos' offense wasn't good enough to put this game away. Then, tragedy struck. While scrambling in the pocket, Derek Carr was sacked by Adam Gostis and broke multiple bones in his back. The time frame to return from the injury was 2 to 6 weeks, but Derek Carr was never really the same after that. We could blame it on play calling, we could call it Derek Carr playing scared, but the bottom line is, he was never the same. As Derek Carr went, so did the rest of the team. The surprising defense had disappeared. The offense was anemic. Keep in mind, Derek Carr was only gone for 1 week, but the damage was done. The Raiders were in the midst of a 4-game losing streak and showed no signs of coming out. The biggest sign for the defense was against Joe Flacco. The Ravens' offense had been terrible all season. Luckily, he was playing the Raiders and looked like the Super Bowl MVP. The defensive play calling was highlighted by constantly lying 10 yards back on 3rd and short. This was the beginning of the end for the defense. There really wasn't much the defense did from this point forward. Every success was more of a product of bad offense than a good defense. However, there was one game, arguably the best game of the NFL this season. The Raiders took on the Chiefs on Thursday night. A loss in this game would practically end their season. Boy, did the Raiders respond. The Raiders defense played a lot like last year. They gave up a ton of yards, but came through in the clutch moments. Alex Smith was an MVP candidate at this point, but the Raiders' defense came through. As for Derek Carr in the offense, they were everything imagined coming into the season. He was taking deep shot after deep shot, and Amari Cooper had over 200 yards receiving. Derek Carr had a big game-winning drive to save their season. It was an exciting game, and many thought the Raiders were back. They certainly looked like it, but it turned out to be an anomaly. The Raiders' comeback never appeared close to happening. They went to Buffalo and got blown out. The regressive Derek Carr disappeared. The most telling play, of course, was instead of going for the Hail Mary before the half, Derek Carr checked it down and it didn't have a prayer. That is the Derek Carr Raider Nation saw for the rest of the season. The defense had become historically bad. As bad as they have been under Norton, it went to a whole other level. As great as quarterbacks in the past have played, the highest rating would have been what this Raiders team had given up. It was pathetic. Jay Cutler looked like Joe Montana. Instead of firing Norton after this game, Del Rio made sure to help Tom Brady's stats before finally turning the key over to John Pagano. Under John Pagano, the Raiders' defense certainly rebounded. It was surprising this move wasn't made sooner. It had more to do with the fact that the Raiders played Paxton Lynch and Geno Smith, but there was no doubt the Raiders' defense improved. The scheme changed and pressure was finally created. With the improvement and the luck of scheduling, and the Chiefs suddenly faltering, the Raiders were given a chance to win the division that they didn't deserve. Heading into the game against the Chiefs, Derek Carr had a chance to get the division lead at a place he'd failed so many times. Both teams were 6-6 and controlled their own destiny to win the division. The heart said the Raiders could still do this, but the head knew it wasn't a playoff team. At the game, they played like who we thought they really were. It wasn't even close, and the Raiders used the last of their chances. The Raiders finished out their season on a 4-game losing streak and never really played like the team everyone imagined. Sure, they'd have their moments and tease us with what could have been. The Chiefs game on Thursday night was really the only game you'd look at and go, that's the Raiders. Things never seemed to get right. This team would get shots, shoot themselves in the foot, and somehow get more bullets. The Raiders were full of talent, but it didn't fulfill anything. With no heart or good scheming, Jack Del Rio was let go. He had his moments, but made wrong decisions. He gambled and won in 2016, but gambled unnecessarily in 2017 and lost. His terrible coordinated decisions ended up being his downfall. Had Bill Musgrave and John Pagano been coordinators from the beginning, I have no doubt the Raiders would have been in the playoffs. Competent coaching was all that was needed for this talented team. Jack Del Rio made his mistakes and paid for it.